All right, we are live.
Okay, welcome to the Housing Commission's November 3rd, 2021 regular meeting. This is a teleconference meeting with the Housing Commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating remotely to ensure proper social distancing in this federal, state, and local emergency. So I will call the meeting to order at 6:32. And I would like to introduce staff and Housing Commission members present. From the Housing Commission, Commissioner Lauren Bigelow, Commissioner Chair Karen Grove, that's me, Commissioner Heather Leach, Commissioner Nevada Merriman, and Commissioner John Pimentel. And as of now, Commissioner Nguyen is not with us, but may join us soon. And we are down one commissioner at the moment. So that accounts for everybody. And then acting housing manager Mike Noche and acting principal planner Karina Sandemeyer with us from staff. And we'll introduce our guests later at their agenda items. So Mike, would you please provide instructions to the Housing Commission and the members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Housing Commission. Welcome everyone to the November 3rd meeting of the Housing Commission. At this time, we ask that members of the Housing Commission please remain on screen. For the duration of the meeting, you will control your own webcams and microphones. Staff will engage cameras and microphones to make presentations and to respond to members of the Housing Commission. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, after the chair calls for public comment on the item you wish to speak on, please engage the raised hand feature, or if you're dialing in from a phone, press *9 to raise your hand to speak. I will then have the ability to open your microphone and you will be able to address the Housing Commission. And that includes my instructions for the meetings, and I will return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so under public comment, the public may address the Housing Commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the Housing Commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The Housing Commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the Housing Commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Mike, do we have any public comment tonight?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a reminder for anyone who's just joining, for members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, please use the raised hand feature to provide your public comment to the Housing Commission, and I'll have the ability to open your microphone. And I do not see any hands raised at this time, so I'll return the meeting to the chair.
Okay. All right, so item D, regular business. Under regular business, the Housing Commission receives informational presentations in addition to considering policy matters and administrative actions. Are there any clarifying questions from the Housing Commission on item D1, which is to approve the minutes from the Housing and Planning Commission's special joint meeting on October 4th, 2021, and the Housing Commission regular meeting on October 6th, 2021, before we take public comment on the item? Seeing none. Mike, do we have any public comment on the minutes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For members who are in the public who are, for members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, please engage the raised hand feature, and I will have the ability to open your microphone and you will be able to address the Housing Commission. And at this time, I do not see any hands raised, so I'll return the meeting.
All right. So do I have a motion and a second for, well, to approve the minutes? Hang on, which I just stated, I think. Approve minutes for Housing.
I'll move. Also move to
joint
approve.
Meeting. So moved by Lauren.
Second.
And seconded by Heather. Okay. And we'll take a roll call vote. Lauren, what is your vote?
Aye.
Okay. And Heather, what is your vote?
Aye.
Nevada, what is your vote? Nevada, do you hear us? Nope, she's looking off into the distance, or she's frozen.
I think she's frozen.
Yeah, okay. John, what is your vote?
Aye.
Okay, and I vote aye. And I could text Nevada to let her know she's frozen. She probably can tell, but just in case she can't, would you like me to do that, Mike? I think the
Yeah,
motion passes with 4 votes, but
it does. And yeah, I think that would be appreciated if you don't
Okay,
mind, Madam
great.
Chair.
okay. Hold on one sec while I do that. Okay. I sent her a message. Let us continue. And she said she's trying to reconnect. Let me see if she needs help. Oh, no, she's just facepalm emoji. She's working on it. Okay. I do think we should probably keep going. Let's see. All right, so item D2 is a recommendation on a below market rate housing compliance proposal by Saris Sanandaji, Presidio Bay Ventures for the Springline project, formerly known as Station 1300. And acting principal planner Karina Sandemeyer will introduce the item, followed by a presentation by Steve Atkinson and Saris Sanadaji from the applicant team. So I will hand it over to you now.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. So the Springline project is an approved mixed-use project on a 6.4 acre site. The applicant is requesting modifications that would create up to 9,000 square feet of additional floor area within the existing footprint. And I believe the applicant has a presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you so much for taking the time and allowing us onto your agenda. I'm here with my colleague, Steve Atkinson, and I just wanted to take a moment to thank each of you for taking the time to hear us out. And on behalf of the project team at Springline, to just say that we're extremely excited to be able to get this project so close to the finish line, and the modifications that we're here to discuss with you in short, have been in process for about 1.5 years from when we took over the project, and really seek to address certain operational and other design, physical design deficiencies that were in place originally. And so though we're here to discuss additional FAR, it really is primarily within the existing below grade subterranean garage, and it seeks to enhance back of house functions, accessibility from an ADA standpoint, safety, and a series of other marketability aspects that of the physical built structure that affect the retail, the residential, future residential tenants, and the commercial office tenants as well. But with that, and cognizant of the fact that your time is short and there's a lot of pressing matters, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Steve, who can share a little bit more on the technical side of how the changes really affect the Housing Commission, and this being the first step in a series of approvals that we're hoping to receive to allow us to complete the project timely. So thank you in advance.
Okay, thank you, Saris. Can everybody hear me? Okay, very good. Mike, I had a presentation I was trying to share, and it says that screen sharing is disabled by the host. Is it possible you could open that up?
Yeah, one moment. Let me.
I'm not sure it will work, but we ought to try it.
And I believe Nevada is back with us. Yay.
I may have taken a shortcut, Steve, but it should be able to screen share now. And if not, I have the presentation as a backup. I can
Okay,
project
now-
it. If not,
Okay, I have this. Is everybody seeing this presentation?
Not yet.
Okay,
I'm happy to. Let me do this, Steve. You want me to put it up and I can just drive while you
yes,
speak to
if
it?
you can do that, you're probably better at screen sharing than I
No
am.
worries. Sorry, Mike, if you could just make me the presenter.
no worries.
I find screen sharing very stressful myself.
Ditto.
It's still, there we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Should be good to go. Okay.
So you want to go to the next? Okay, thank you. So again, my name is Steve Atkinson. I'm an attorney on the project. I've been working on the project with Cyrus and his team for about the last year and a half. And previously I had worked on the initial entitlements for the project. So I have that background. The project was approved in early 2017, included about 220,000 square feet of office and retail space and 183 residential units. There was inclusionary housing approved in 2017, 20 BMRs of various types. Part of the BMR approved in 2017 was part of the so-called public benefit to attain a bonus under the downtown specific plan. And as Cyrus has just mentioned, Presidio Bay came in about mid 2020 and took over the project and then identified certain changes that need to be made. We have a couple of images here of the project. One from the corner of Oak Grove and Garwood, and the other from El Camino. So this is a brief summary of all the changes that we're asking for. Some of them are not actually changes, they're really just implementation, like liquor license and minor tweaks. The key points here is that the second point is we're adding some spaces primarily in the basement for various support and ancillary facilities, not useful office space or residential space, but just, backup facilities, storage rooms, locker room, things of that nature. And also on the second story, we're adding a very small, just a couple of 100 square feet per building, just to deal with a circulation deficiency. And that adds a minor amount of square footage. So you want to go to the next slide then, Cyrus. Thank you. So although, as Karina said, we're talking about adding, approximately 9,000 square feet of space in the basement, some of that is residential space, and others of it really offsets space that's been lost elsewhere in the project. So on the net, our additions would increase us to a total of 224,000 square feet of office and CSU, which is, more commonly known as retail space. So overall, this is about 4,000 square feet more than our 2017 approval. And that's the key number, I think, for figuring out, the BMR compliance. And all of the increased office and CSU spaces are in the basement level, again, except for that small passageway on the second floor of the office building. And these uses by their nature would generate minimum additional housing demand. However, we're going ahead and proposing to pay the fee based on these without any kind of a discount, for housing demand. Because the original approvals allowed kind of a range of about 10,000 square feet up and down on either the office or CSU space, it's difficult to calculate exactly how much each one of them has increased. Both the office and the CSU spaces are in the middle of the ranges that the city approved. We're therefore proposing that the BMR requirement for this additional 4,000 square feet be satisfied by payment of the in lieu fees And we basically have split the 4,000 additional square feet, 50-50, 2,000 square feet of office, 2,000 square feet of group B, which is non-office uses, in this case, retail. And that adds up with the calculation shown here. And this was also in your staff report with the calculation shown here of a little over $63,000. In talking with staff, there may be some minor adjustments up and down in terms of the square footage as they look at exactly how we've characterized some of our spaces. But it will be in the general ballpark of the 63,000 figure. I think that's a fairly simple story, but if there are questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, so we will go to public comment on this, but before we do any of the commissioners have any clarifying questions? Seeing none. Mike, do we have any public comment on this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, please engage the raised hand feature. I will then have the ability to open your microphone and you can provide your public comment to the Housing Commission. And I am not seeing any hands raised, so I will return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Okay. So I will open up for discussion and or a motion, but actually let's just open up for discussion first. Does anybody have any comments they want to make? Heather.
I was looking over this and I'm new. I looked over the staff report. I'm new to the Housing Commission. So it sounds like this, to reiterate, this was already approved and what you're talking about is a modification.
That's
and
correct.
There's already 20 BMR units in the original proposal, housing units.
Correct. There were 20 BMR units in the original project approval in 2017. That's out of a total of 183 total residential units. The number of residential units is not changing. What we're doing basically is primarily in the basement. We're taking what was essentially parking circulation area in some cases and just turning that into support uses. So the building is not actually getting bigger. Some space in the basement is being reclassified to a different type of use.
Okay.
And I would just add, further clarify that the project is near completion at this point. We've actually received our conditional temporary certificate of occupancy for the two office buildings, so 1300 and 1302 El Camino. The residential building was always lagging, and we were anticipating TCO by year end and are almost done. We're about 90-95% done with the actual units themselves. Candidly, the certain project modifications and these minor operational changes that we're making have resulted in a delay. And so we're hopeful that through these next series of meetings that we're scheduled for, starting with the Housing Commission, then with the Planning Commission, and ending with City Council, that if we were to receive the positive feedback that we're hoping to receive, that we're on track to complete the residential portions of the project by April as well, so that we can have spring move-ins and occupy the much needed housing that's being built there.
And relevant to the Housing Commission, we've been also, other people on our team have been working with the Housing Department in Menlo Park, Housing Division in Menlo Park, in terms of the implementation actions for allowing the occupancy, for the occupancy of the BMR units also.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Nevada.
I just wanted to say nice to see you again, Mr. Atkinson. I find this request to be quite straightforward, and I will be I'm happy to make a motion whenever anybody is ready.
Thank you. So,
I see Lauren's hand up.
I just have a real quick question. I see that the 14 units of the BMR, 14 of the BMR units are low income units and 6 of them are moderate. Could you tell me about the unit spread size, what it looks like?
It's a range of units. There are some smaller 1-bedrooms. There are some larger 1-bedrooms. There are some 2-bedrooms. I know I apologize. I don't have that committed to memory.
I can give you a little bit of that. So at the time, again, when we took over and obviously sort of contemplating or trying to understand what the implication of COVID was sort of on a go forward, there was a series of studios that we were able to convert into junior 1-bedrooms that sort of allowed for separation. Those are actually decently sized, almost 700 square feet, which allowed for that walling off of the bedroom. And the 2-bedrooms range anywhere from sort of that 1,000 to the sort of 1,200-1,300 square foot range. So there's actually, they're rather generous sized units throughout, and there's not a distinction from a unit size standpoint between the BMRs and the market rate. So.
And do you know how many 2-bedrooms there are? I'm always delighted to get 2 bedrooms, so I'm particularly.
Yeah, I apologize. I will get you that information. I will follow up with an email of the exact breakdown of the 20 units, including the square footage. But I don't have the unit matrix of the BMRs off the top of my head.
I ask because we have a desire to make larger unit sizes happen, just so that we can house more families in Menlo Park. But I am ridiculously excited to see a proposal along El Camino move forward near completion that's near transit. So thank you guys for making this happen.
We couldn't be much nearer transit than we are.
Exactly. It's amazing.
And we're grateful for the opportunity. It was having stepped into the project that had ceased construction because of the shelter-in-place orders, and seeing that refresh, that reset, gave us an opportunity to really think through what the future needs are as well, not just for the office tenants, but also the housing tenants. And we came to the project with that mindset of being a mixed-use developer that really focuses on both housing and commercial, and being able to do that in a larger project context. So we're hoping to be able to undertake some more projects in Menlo Park, and certainly with a heavy emphasis on housing and affordable housing being a large component of a market rate and privately funded development. And family housing has always been something that we've pushed for with our other projects throughout the Bay Area. So.
And I'll just add that as a land use attorney, we are often involved in the entitlement of the project and not necessarily at the implementation. And it's fun and exciting to see this project delivered. So.
Thank you both.
Anyone else have a comment? I have one. Since you're looking forward to doing more development in Menlo Park, I'll just say I agree with Nevada. This is very straightforward, and I want the project to move forward, and I don't want to take up more of your time. But I will tell you, for future, some things that crossed my mind was, gee, I wonder, instead of that in lieu fee, if we could get deeper affordability on one of the very low income units or one of the low income units and turn it into a very low income unit. Another thing that crossed my mind is maybe one of the low income units could change from a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom, things like that, to get a little bit more value for our lower, deeper affordability or larger family mix housed in Menlo Park. So I say that not because I'm asking you to make a change, because I don't want to slow things down, but when you come forward in the future, those are the kind of things that I believe that the Housing Commission and the city have heard as being priorities for the community. So
Madam Chair, and I hear you loud and clear, and candidly, it's so much easier when we come in with a blank slate because we sort of have an understanding of what the starting point is, and then when we play with the various variables and understanding how that affects sort of the overall project, it makes it a lot more straightforward. One of the things that I will say has been something that our team has really taken to heart is to actually figure out the overall process of implementing sort of the onboarding of the BMR qualified tenants and residents in the applicant process, because it's not as straightforward, or it's not an existing sort of process here in Menlo Park as it is in, say, San Francisco or other jurisdictions that have been doing it for a little longer. And so we're working through that as well. And part of that is understanding then the implication of the AMI, and so what 80 AMI means, or 110 or 120, and so on. And so what deep affordability, say at 50, means within the context of Menlo Park. And we're certainly rolling our sleeves up to understand that before we come forward to propose any other project, because we too want to understand what the baseline looks like as we come forward, knowing that the baseline affordability for any new project in Menlo Park is sort of at that 15% mark. But what does that mean with the thresholds of AMI, and how we can really push that to provide deeper affordability on the one hand, and then more family-oriented units, whether it's 2 or 3 bedrooms on the other as well. So,
Or both at this, or both on the same hand.
right, exactly. Well, I view it as sort of a, it's sort of an X and Y, and so
Yeah.
how do we maximize
Right.
all of that? Yeah.
Great. Okay, with that, I either more comments or a motion. I don't want to make a motion as the chair, so I'm going to sit here until somebody else does.
So moved.
And I'll second.
And I assume you're moving to approve the staff recommendation of approving the modifications per the staff report.
Yes, Mike, do you need me to articulate that, or do you have it?
I think we are good with that, but I just want to confirm with staff member Sandmeyer, if you don't mind, Karina. Is that clear?
Yes, I believe so. So our recommendation is for a specific condition of approval. So if that's part of the motion, then that's great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have moved by Nevada and seconded by, I missed it, Lauren?
Yep.
Okay, Lauren, how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay, and Heather, how do you vote?
Aye.
Nevada?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Okay, so the motion passes.
Thank you all so very much. Really
You're
appreciate your
welcome.
time.
Thank
Have
you.
a great evening, commissioners. Look forward to seeing you again.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thanks. Okay. So now item D3 is a presentation by the city's below market rate housing program administrator, House Keys. And so Julius Nyanda from House Keys will provide the presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. You can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you. Nice to see you all. So yes, my name is Julius Nyanda. I'm the program manager for House Keys. We are the BMR program administrators, working with the city, onboarding the city, launching the new construction units, onboarding the existing portfolio. So this has been a pleasure for us to work so far, and we're plugging away at that. So today's presentation is really about the application process and trying to understand what applicants go through to get into the system as an applicant, and then also what are we actually collecting this information for, both in terms of tenant selection and also preparing them for the other side of this, which involves compliance. So obviously we want to connect as many people to the application process, and ultimately we end up with people that we're going to end up working with from a compliance standpoint as well. So I just wanted to, I didn't want to interrupt the presentation that Springline was making earlier, but since we asked the question about BMRs, I'll bring up on my screen Mike, if you can give me access.
No problem, Julius. Hold on 1 second. You should be able to present now.
Okay.
And it looks like Chelsea is connecting to audio, so I think she's joining us at 7:02.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Can you see my screen here?
Yes.
Yep. Perfect.
Oh, yeah.
So no studio units, 17 one bedrooms, 3 2 bedrooms. And then that's broken up. I'll pull up the more detailed breakdown. Go ahead.
Yeah, I see now why you're saying. I didn't want to interrupt them. You had the
Yeah, I knew they were asking, the question, obviously, we've been sort of preparing for this for a minute, but yeah, these will be broken up into lottery based on income type and bedroom size. Is typically how we break it up. So that's the basic, and I'll come back to answer any questions about Springline on our other slide presentation. But in the application process, what we're trying to do essentially is on this 1 through 8 is determine household size, determine the household income, assign an application ID, which really allows the city to have access to somebody's personal information by them formally applying for the program. And then number 3 is really about entry into the lottery or drawing that they enter to be selected. So it's important to understand that, I think we basically organize every single opportunity by drawing an applicant pool. And so when Springline, a project like Springline is presented, the first question is, what is the mix of bedroom count? Because that ties to household size. And what is the mix of income limit? Because that ties to how people can be eligible to apply. So we'll organize that into a set of drawings, whether it's 1, 2, or 3. Then we'll post those to the public to be able to know how to enter that drawing. And that's typically what happens is they get an application ID for the Menlo Park program, and then they enter the drawing for the Springline project. And those are the 2 connections that the applicant's making when they go through that process. They'll use that same application ID for any subsequent projects that builders provide as well. So they'll keep that same application ID and they'll apply for multiple drawings, and the drawing will be the way that they connect to the project. So it's kind of an official way of allowing us to parse out between the applicant pool that's applying for the program and who wants that particular project that's available right now. That then leads us to a selection process based on the date that they entered the drawing. We publish the results of the drawing depending on how we ranked the different applicants inside that drawing. And then also they have a file submission deadline to get a package in that we can then review their supporting documentation for whether or not they're eligible for the program and whether or not they meet the program requirements. Eligibility is pretty straightforward. That's typically based on the program requirements, household size, are you below the income limit? What's your household makeup? Determining qualification is a little bit different because this could be tied to the community itself. Like if in terms of applying for a rental, the property management company is going to tell the tenant how many multiples of the rent amount do they have to earn in income. So you have to be both, the challenge and its frustration sometimes for the applicant is they have to be both eligible for the program, so they can't make too much, but then they have to make enough to be able to afford the rent in the case of a rental program or afford the mortgage payment in the case of a purchase program. So that qualification is probably the toughest part for the applicant to go through, is both the eligibility and qualification. And then obviously we're going to maintain a database of people that have gone through that process as they go through from applicant to now program participant, and they could be making requests for service or trying to do a refinance or handling their annual compliance. So we have 2 websites that we set up for the city. One is myhousekeys.com, which is the primary website that everybody's using to manage their application portal and their engagement with the house keys process. And then housekeys10.com is the primary website that holds all the information about the City of Menlo Park's program. So the first part of the application process for applicants is that they'll get an opportunity drawing notification because they'll have that application ID and they'll submit their email address, and we will notify them that a new opportunity is available. And we've sent mailers as well to people that have been on the application pool as well. So they receive snail mail and they receive email based on us getting a new opportunity that's available. We'll be telling them that, on top of entering the drawing and getting an application ID, they should start early on thinking about the document checklist and providing the supporting documents. So obviously, to be able to make sure that somebody is below the income limits and household size, there's a lot of documentation that they have to submit to do so. So we try to encourage them to work on that file package as early as possible, and they can upload the documents to that portal using that user ID that they have available to them in the myhousekeys.com website. When we have orientation classes, we typically hold an orientation webinar at least once every 60 days for the program. And that allows us to just cover both rental and ownership program and how they work. There are pre-recorded videos that are made available to the public to watch if they can't attend the live web stream when we do it. And then they take a home buyer or home renter quiz, depending on what program they're applying for. And then we have what we call FAQ sessions, where we're doing mini webinars for about an hour, where folks may jump on a call like this and they can ask questions about the program that weren't answered by staff during the week, or they didn't get a chance to ask that question during the orientation class. So in having people take that first step of setting up their MyHouseKeys account, they're going to go online. There's a bit of a security that we have there. So they have to make sure it's a secure login, and there's some rules there of what to set the password. We don't see the password. They're the only ones that can see and reset their password. So it's a very secure process that they go through. The next step is once they get into the system, then they will go to what we call the program center and get an application ID for the City of Menlo Parks program. So first they set up their HouseKeys account. They're going to enter information about their household size, who are the members of their household. And it's important to allow them to edit that information leading up until the time that they apply for the program. So it sort of allows us to not have to maintain that information on their behalf with like a static document. They can go in and update that as needed as situations with income or household size change. So they'll have what's called a member profile that will update the members of their household, and they'll have an income profile that updates the information about their employer, whether they're self-employed, have a W-2 position, or something in between, are all counted as income. As we said, they get an application ID for the City of Menlo Parks program, and you'll see that they can have access to either the rental program or purchase program. They can get an application ID for either one. Those two application IDs then are uniquely tied to any drawings. So you could have a purchase opportunity in the purchase program, you could have a rental program opportunity, and they're allowed to apply for both. Sorry. So each opportunity is listed in the program center. So it provides information about price, basic information about bedroom count, and the information for the upcoming dates. Then there's, on the right side, you'll see here, there are drawings, and the drawings are really to allow them to understand how they formally let us know that they don't just want to apply for the program, but they actually want to be a part of the Springline wait list at that particular time. So they enter that drawing that puts them on the Springline, in this example, wait list. And they can do that enter drawing either from the drawing list, or they can enter from the opportunity list that shows more information that's really unit specific. So this is just a view of what the Menlo Park drawings looks like. And then the other thing is, sometimes people enter a drawing, find out more information about the project itself, and may want to opt out. So they may not want to be in that drawing anymore, so they can actually opt in and opt out of that drawing. So we do enable that ability for them to do that. And then, like we mentioned earlier, they're going to upload their file cabinet, all the documentation that's needed to support their application. And again, I can't stress enough, there's so much documentation that we have to collect to be able to reasonably underwrite somebody's eligibility and qualification. And so we try as much as possible within these meetings to try to get people to say, look, you got to be committed to the documentation process. It's not just that you want to enter the lottery, because sometimes people get that confused. There's probably a 20% drop from people that enter the drawing versus want to go through the application process of providing all the supporting documents. And a lot of times the property manager and loan officer that they work with help them through that process. And obviously we can do so much, but our counselors and our loan officers and our property managers do play a significant role in helping people get their files packaged. So this is just a view of the file cabinet. Once it's in there, they can see the files that are in there over time. What ends up happening, as we talked about, there's the entry date to the drawing itself, and then we publish the results for the public as well. And that's, sometimes folks want to enter the drawing and see really where they fall in line, before they commit to all the paperwork. So there's typically a time frame between when we publish the results from the ranking and when the file that they actually have to submit is due. So they typically know I got to enter the drawing by this date. I'm going to see the results on this date, and I've got to submit my file by the following date. And those are typically the most important dates that the public has to know. When do I have to enter the drawing? When are you going to rank or show the ranking results? And when do I have to have my file ready for you to review? The information besides the myhousekeys.com website, they would go to the housekeys10.com, which is the City of Menlo Park's program website, to find out more. If they're applying for the homeownership program, then they're going to see the pre-recorded videos that they can watch about how below market rate programs work, what the documentation looks like, what's the application process. And then they take what's called a home buyer quiz that allows them to answer the questions based on the orientation class that they just went through. Typically, they'll go through and download the application from here. So sometimes people don't have access to, being able to get everything online. So we make it available here as a download. We can send it to folks as well if they request it. So we try to be as accommodating as possible to folks to get access to the information. But that's the one challenge for everybody is there's no way to get around how much documentation is required throughout the process. We have our program guidelines available there. We walk people through, what it means to be a median income household, and whether you're moderate, so you're above median, or you're low income as a percentage of median. And so the idea is to get them to be familiar with looking at the concept of affordable housing and why it's income-driven housing. And I think I've probably mentioned this a few times. We're trying to really, pass off this term as income-driven pricing as opposed to affordable housing, because we head into markets where the below market rate price could actually be higher than the market rate price if it were to collapse, because the market rate price is based on comparables. So we're in this careful time with interest rates potentially going up. And the last time this happened in 2011 and 12, you did have a lot of jurisdictions that had sort of underwater below market rate units, which is kind of a scary time to be in. We did experience a little bit of that scariness on the moderate income side in rentals. When the rental market collapsed, you had sort of higher, especially in San Mateo County, where you've got higher incomes, the below market rate calculated rent is actually higher than the market rate rent in some cases. And so to the extent that we can, we're trying to influence the maybe policy direction to be able to really focus on promoting to the public that these are income-driven prices, not necessarily below. Using the word below market rate or affordable is starting to get attacked. When we put ads on Facebook or different places, you see the public sort of pushing back on, how is this affordable? How is this below market rate? And a lot of times they don't realize that the median income has gone up 50% in the last few years. So there's not this understanding that, hey, the cost of affordable housing has doubled almost in some cases over the last 10 years. So there's a lot of, I think, need to really help the public understand how these prices get determined, and how if you're in a high cost county, a high income county, that's going to translate into higher rental and purchase prices. So the two things we also try to talk about is how people are reviewed in the process. So we use this example as a family that's been reviewed, and talking about the fact that when you look at the eligibility requirements and how to review a household's income, it's based on 12 months going forward. So we're projecting out, what are you expected to earn over the next 12 months? This is a very important distinction from how most people review risk underwriting, which is based on, can you make the payment? And when you go to that risk-based underwriting, it's a completely different flip, where they're looking at the last 24 months of your income and determining what the average. So somebody could be projecting out, in this case, $122,000 a year in projected income, but their average income might be $110,000 a year. So you end up with this file that ends up being eligible at $122,000 based on scrutinizing it, but the lender is telling them, hey, we can only give you credit for $110,000 based on your average. And this is based on that, like I said, that complicated sweet spot of not making so much that you're above the income limit, but making enough to make the mortgage payment or rent payment. But then also realizing that the way to view your income is completely different depending on how you're being underwritten. So one underwriter for your lender is going to say one thing about your income, and the underwriter for the program, eligibility program that you're looking at, is going to be looking at a different income for the same household. So that's also a real challenge for households to get their arms around as well. So those factors that that the minimum requirements besides being eligible typically are tied to credit score, liens, minimum down payment, attending the homeownership class. Those are the things that we typically try to get people to understand, on top of considering the fact that what are the benefits to, you know, below market rate housing, long-term affordability, ability to save, and possible tax benefits. Some of the challenges is that are that you have to be a first-time home buyer. You know, it's not an investment property, so you don't get to flip it. You know, the 55-year restriction does change the way people view the purchase opportunity. And then, like we talk about with paperwork. On the rental side, the one thing to think about on the rental side is the challenge is a little different with rental than ownership, because you have a property management company that's in the mix, as well as the developer that's building the project. So one of the things that's really a challenge for any program administrator is that you might talk to a builder very early on in the process. Could be a year before they get TCO or certificate of occupancy. It may take them 6 or 7 months from first meeting to actually choose the property management company. And that property management company tends to do a lot of this stuff on their own, even if they're less experienced. But do you have two completely different parties on the rental side of the home builder, project owner, versus the property manager who's going to run that project at the initial lease up and the vacancies that subsequently come up. So in the same case, we try to get people started with paperwork and an orientation class. They watch the videos, they go through what's called now a House Keys affordable rental quiz to help them do this offline. And a lot of times what we're doing is trying to give people an opportunity to satisfy the orientation requirement without having to be live on the scene with us in these drawings or in these orientation classes. They have their paperwork they can download again, and then going through the different requirements. We talk about with BMR rental, and this is another challenge with rental versus ownership, is that with BMR rental, every single agreement is determining how rents are calculated, whether it's how much they can increase rents from the initial rent versus what the city may set citywide for all new construction. So especially when you have a portfolio of rentals, all these rentals have been drafted at different times. There's different ways for them to calculate what those rentals are. So we try to help the public understand that as well, is that we always have to reference the property management's agreement that they're working under in order to provide them with rental amounts in subsequent years. But one of the challenges for everybody, especially your moderate income renters, is that they think about, I have to income certify every year. And so if I think my income is going to go up, affordable rentals are maybe a challenging option for me to seek housing. Because with purchase, right, the big benefit of purchase is not just the upside of gaining equity, but it's the fact that you income certify once and then never again. Versus with rental, you're income certifying every single year. So if you know your income is going to go up, you have to think twice about whether or not you want to put yourself through getting in for a year and then possibly being found ineligible because your income's gone up in a year or two. So minimum requirements are still there. Rental score is still something that a lot of property managers are using. The community requirements are still something to think about. And this last piece, which is pretty important, is what is the percentage that they need to earn above the rental amount to be eligible for that project? And that can change from builder to builder, property manager to property manager. As we talked about probably in our last meeting, there are preferences as well for those that live and work in Menlo Park, lived in Menlo Park and been displaced, or the unhoused residents as well. But it's still, those without preferences are still able to apply. They just are placed in line behind the folks that do meet the preference. The occupancy standards that we have on file include one person for a studio and 1 bedroom, and then a minimum of 1 person for bedroom all the way up to 5. And then we've got obviously the 2 to 11 people for the max if you're talking about 5 bedrooms. So the resources partners that we work with as well, and those folks have been helpful for us. I think counseling agencies are probably a big part of, in our software that we're building out. It's really trying to network all these parties together between the property manager, the loan officer, the housing counselors, to really try to get the information sharing a lot more efficiently done, especially from a support standpoint, because some buyers and some renters really do need a year and a half to develop into a buyer. So when they first come to a program, they might not be ready right away, but we do want to use this as an opportunity to help people understand what are the steps to even become more buyer ready or more borrower ready over time. And so the hope is that, you know, this will serve as we bring in these different groups and make them part of the network, this will serve as a resource for folks even beyond just qualifying for that particular program. We usually end with making sure people know about the dates again. There's an events tab that we maintain. We have the weekly Friday sessions. We do a Saturday session every other Saturday at 10 a.m. for folks that can't attend the Friday or the orientation class. And then that's typically what we walk people through that are applying for the program. So as we do with applicants, I'll open it up for questions.
Okay, at this point, I wonder if we should do, let's go ahead and take clarifying or, questions from the Housing Commission, and then we will go to public comment. And the public might have questions as well. Lauren, I see your hand.
As no surprise to anyone, I have questions. Julius, I used to be a BMR administrator, so mad love for the work that you guys are doing, and this is super thorough. Very, very much appreciate it. The one question that I had, I know that you guys are kind of new to this gig in Menlo Park, but do we have, and I hated this question as an administrator, but I'm going to ask you anyway, is given the pipeline, do you guys have like an estimated wait time for folks from sign up to when they move into a unit? And I fully recognize that rental is going to be very different from ownership.
We try to say it's about 30 days. Well, we try to say from the time that we select the tenant to the time that they move in, it's a 30-day swing. They should be planning for 30 to 45 days. If they're hedging, they should be planning a little bit for 30 to 45 days for that timeline. But we try to, from the time you go into a drawing and you have a deadline to the time we publish the results for that drawing, they typically have a week out from that published date to get their file to us. And from the time that we get it into a lineup with an underwriter, it's about a 2-week process of back and forth. So if they have their items together on a first or second review, that process usually takes about 2 weeks. But like we say, it takes about 30 days to get through the entire process for them to actually be ready with the property manager to sign a lease.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. What I guess I was asking more about was when people enter the program. So not specifically for an individual drawing or anything like that. Do you usually have a time that you've seen? I know that you work with other cities too. Is there a usual time that people hang out on programmatic lists before they get into a unit?
Oh, like how? I guess it depends because you're running a lottery. So if there's folks that, I'll give you an example. Sometimes there's vacancies in some cases where we've had a drawing open and now it's a first come, first serve. You might have somebody sign up and right there be ready with their file and get in within 2 weeks. Then you've got folks that entered 5 lotteries and they just never have gotten a chance to get in the home. So we don't have the stats yet we don't maintain necessarily for every buyer or every renter, how long were they waiting before they bought? It definitely is a good question. We can back into that number and find out, but at this particular time, we don't maintain sort of the turnaround time from when people enter to when people sign up to when they get a house, to when they become housed, only because chance is such a big part of it. But it's still a good question. It's still a good question. I'm sure applicants want to know.
Yeah. And it was more along the lines of, tell me the data. I appreciate that there's a lot of it that comes to chance. I think I started to notice patterns in how long it was taking people to move up the list when I was working them. And so that was the insight that I was looking for, but we may not have had enough churn through the timelines and the pipeline yet to get there. The other question that I had was, you mentioned the entry date was dependent. So I want to make sure that I understood correctly. It sounded like a person signed up for the program for Menlo Park
Yeah.
And then their application was date and time stamped, and then they were given a randomized number based on whichever lotteries they were entered into.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so you might, so we try to tell builders to give us 60 days for marketing. So ideally, people know 60 days before, hey, we plan on doing the drawing in 60 days. And so from that date that we plan on doing the drawing, we plan on publishing the results within a couple of weeks from holding the drawing. And then we plan on having a deadline for you to enter your file within that time frame. So from the time we announce, they get that announcement, there should be about 60 to 75 days that they knew. So they're going to look at that last 7. Some people will wait until that last 7 days to get their file in. But ideally, they've had a notification from day one that that file submission date was going to be a week after the results were published. So ideally, they're meeting with their loan officers 60 days before. They're trying to get their understanding of the rental qualification 60 days before. So by the time we hold the lottery, the folks that are ready to go are ready to go.
Okay. And with regard to the marketing, what channels do you guys use? Are you solo digital, or are you doing paper copy as well?
Right now, I mean, the problem with COVID restrictions, it really did impact our marketing. So we're almost 100% digital right now. When we did, one of the big parts of what we do when we come into a new jurisdiction is hold these orientation classes in City Hall. That's pretty much a big part of what we do. But right now, we haven't been able to do any kind of in-person workshops. We are sponsoring certain organizations and their workshops that they do. I think that's just now starting to come back. A lot of organizations were canceling their workshops, but that's starting to creep back now. But yeah, it's pretty tough right now with the in-person part being taken away.
Okay, so you guys are, I love the transparency of the website and that people can go back and check up on things, but you guys are heavily digital focused and less paper, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it. And the, what support do you provide individuals who don't have English as a first language?
It depends on the language. I mean, if they request an accommodation, we can help. A lot of our staff speaks different languages, but if it's something outside of what we provide, we can get the translation services for that individual if needed.
Great.
Typically, what we try to do is get people to at least get the help that they need to be able to get an application ID number, and then we can support them and track that individual, because it's very hard to do it without getting some information from them to be able to track when, how they move through the process.
So true. Okay. And I think last but not least, you mentioned that you had a list of qualified lenders. How do you qualify them?
Well, lenders attend an orientation class, and they pay a fee every year to be on the list. I believe the last list fee I think we posted was $300 a year that loan officers pay to be on the list. Right now, we're in the process of setting up a lender portal, but we try to track, good actors. They get their loan approval, their loan documents or the BMR program documents approved by their legal department, so they know that they can actually lend on the BMRs, because if they don't do that, then they're kind of wasting the time of the buyer. So those are the 3 things. You attend the orientation class, you have your annual fee, and you have your legal team review the restrictions so you can do it.
Perfect. Okay. And oh, wait, that this is just such a basic one, but do you know the number of people that are on the lists right now?
As of today, 489 people are on the ownership and 657 are on the rental.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you answering super, super detailed questions.
No problem. No problem at all.
Okay, Nevada, you're next.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. I really just have 2 questions, and I'll start with one that Lauren partially asked, but
Okay.
I was just wondering if you or potentially the city could say a little bit more about marketing. It's such a key component to how you reach different groups of people in the city who need this assistance. And I'm wondering, what's the kind of collaboration between you and Mr. Noche, and where are areas that, given your contract's relatively new in the city, how might you go about strengthening the various different specific communities that are going to be really good places to spread information.
Mike, you wanna go with me first, you first? How do you want to do it?
Sure. Yeah, I know. I mean, I guess I would just start, Julius, with kind of some of the progress we're making with Springline. And that development coming online rather soon. So some of that has been delayed, as the applicants mentioned. But that being said, on the city side of things, we would definitely be using all of our resources as far as the website is concerned. And then additionally, I think, I'll have Julius kind of speak to this part of it as far as with the property management company, and whether like hard copy would be used as well, but additionally, like what avenues would be used. I think that's mostly been something that the House Keys team and the property management team have been using. It's also been working most recently in the last meeting that I attended. That information will go on the Springline website as well. So that's another important aspect. So if anyone goes to their website, there will be a section that'll direct them to the House Keys website to actually apply for BMR opportunities. And I'll let Julius jump in and I can elaborate further. But only thing to add would be additional community partners that we, other nonprofits and so forth. So, but I'll let Julius jump in.
Yeah, typically what ends up happening is the city has a listserv that you maintain, obviously, for a lot of the email addresses that you may not maintain on file. Then there's sometimes there's a city manager newsletter that goes out and we piggyback on that. So typically the first piece is there's some kind of listserv that the city has that initial launch point gets out to as far as word. The second one is local publications. So we do use Bay Area News Group and other publications to get an initial advertorial out about the program. And then we also work with, once things I think open up again, I think the challenge is people haven't been in the office, but we'll work with the Chamber of Commerce. We'll come up with our list of local organizations and get information out to them. And ideally we would be sort of street teaming to get out to those folks at those organizations, provided they were in the office. What's been really helpful to get the word out are real estate agents and loan officers. They tend to have the most, outreach to folks that are applying that live and work in Menlo Park. Those are the ones. And then your housing counseling agencies are also obviously, your HUD-approved counseling agencies are another big source of getting the word out as well. So depending on, these different partners that we mentioned on our site there with housing counseling agencies in the East Bay, Opportunity Echo, or Eden Council of Hope, we try to work with those HUD-approved counseling agencies that are local as well. So those are typically the avenues that we try to get the word out with. Springline is going to be our opportunity to sort of launch that. We don't have a big ownership project that's coming up, because that would also be another big launch point for us to get the word out, but it's typically based on the projects themselves.
Mike, I'm thinking that something that we might want to explore, not for any particular project, but it's just kind of beefing up the city infrastructure to have a more specific targeted marketing approach for these resources. So that I have done marketing for affordable housing tax credit units, and the very best city have lists of 25 different places that they want you to hit, whether they are this church, this place on B Street, whatever, what have you. The folks that have been, decades long in their housing positions, they have ideas and they have communities that they want to serve and all of that. So, I know that with this team, we're kind of at the beginning or at a fresh place to start, but that's really something I'd like to see you develop if you can kind of put some of the foundation steps in place. I think that would be very helpful over time. Thank you. And then I think I had one more question here. Let me see if I can remember. Oh, so Menlo Park is funky. We have these pockets that are like part of Menlo Park, but not part of Menlo Park. We have these incorporated areas, I think at least 4 that are sort of within Menlo. or it's very much surrounded by. Many of them have the same zip code as
You mean
incorporated city.
unincorporated Nevada? You said incorporated.
Well, the unincorporated are surrounded by the incorporated. So like Menlo Oaks and some Stanford stuff, and then over there, West Menlo, and then even some places like North Fair Oaks. And so how in your system do you really account for that so that somebody doesn't get super frustrated when they get to the end and they actually they're not eligible?
I can look into that further. I think it's all driven by your preference guidelines, though. Your guidelines determine how, because that's a big part of, like, Los Gatos is a good example of a community that deals with the same thing. But your sort of Menlo proper area of your guidelines, we're following that. So those guidelines were published before we came. So we'll probably end up referring to exactly what that legal language says, defines you as a in or out of.
I think it's pretty easy unless it's mapped carefully for somebody to get pretty frustrated because of Menlo's odd little micro neighborhoods of all sorts. So, you know, that's just something I want to see as kind of bulletproof, so we don't get somebody in who's been preparing to be a buyer for a year and a half and actually they never had a chance of getting a unit because they don't even though they have the same zip code, they live in the Stanford Weekend Acres or they live in Menlo Oaks, and they're not qualified to be assistants. So if that could be something that you look into, and I liked your presentation and the mapping of things, and there's a nerd somewhere that knows how to code for this, so please help us out on that front. I have heard, unfortunately, of these cases where people have gotten pretty frustrated at the end, and that just kind of breaks my heart that we haven't laid it out so that it's user friendly.
Yeah, I agree, and probably what will happen. I mean, we're pretty early on in our time, but I think one of the things that we plan on doing is, even though I think the guidelines were updated recently, but that part, that's where they have to be, right? Because whatever we come up with has to be that legal language, because like you said, people will challenge it legally. And hopefully council will have to approve that language so that we have something that's, to your point, bulletproof, that has to be approved by council.
I think Nevada's point is, it is bulletproof. It is what it is. But when somebody like takes 3 steps into your process, and they're about, you know, maybe before they get to the point of scanning and uploading documents and sort of nurturing that hope, investing in the process, you should have a big star that flashes that says, caution, are you aware you don't live in Menlo Park? And so you will not be in the in the first tier of the lottery.
Got it.
You'll be in this, you know, like, I just like flashing red lights so that they know for sure that their chances are the same as someone who lives in Mountain View, even though their zip code is a Menlo Park zip code and the city is supposed on the envelope is Menlo Park. They're in unincorporated Menlo Park, so they are in the same tier as someone in another city. So I think, Nevada, is that correct, what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably, you know, depending on how you look at it, somewhere around 4,600 folks that probably just go around saying they live in Menlo Park that are not in the that are in the unincorporated parts. And the city from time to time goes through this. I'm looking at it whenever it goes through its annexation questionings and processes. You can see some of the analysis that's been done there, but we want to make sure that that's just really tightened up so that folks know what they're eligible for. Or we change our policy and include them, whatever it is. We've got to be clear on how we're going to move through that.
It feels like there should be a really easy way to enter your mailing address or your residence and have it say, like, you are in Menlo Park or you're in unincorporated Menlo Park or something like that. And then people would know which qualifications they fall into, because that was something that I dealt with all of the time, was people didn't know where in the neighborhood they fell, if they were on the right side of the line or the left side of the line or what have you. It's hard with the way things are zoned, but also people don't always completely understand the levels of preference. So maybe there's a way to help funnel. I'm sorry, this is going crazy. maybe there's a way to help funnel them through and direct them through that process a little bit more, do a little bit more handholding.
Got it. Yeah, so I think there's a few moving parts to the concern. Like you said, it's trying to get them the information out as early as possible that they don't meet the requirement. If we say, you don't meet the requirement, making sure that we have it codified and supported. So because it's just kind of like, it's a cascading problem, right? So if I sign up, you tell me I don't live here. What? I live here. Where does it say I don't live here? Oh, no, look at the guidelines. Who supported those guidelines, right? So it's kind of like that domino effect. So to your point, it's a great problem. And I definitely, I'm taking several notes as we talk about it. But as I think through how to solve, there's the data source problem, right? The code interface change and making that change to be able to let them know. And then the rule and compliance aspect of it so that we have a defensible process. We go to mediation now with applicants for all kinds of reasons. And this is probably an area that's probably going to end up being one of those mediation issues for people that feel that they should, even if they live in a marginal part of the city or area, should be counted. So we'll definitely look at that in all the aspects.
Okay, so I have two more questions. One is maybe as a follow-up to this meeting, you could provide some quick metrics on, I believe that you worked on one of the projects that was recently funded by this commission and the city council that was an acquisition. So it was almost instant that they acquired the building and moved right into lease up, the HIP housing project on Coleman. If you could provide just a little bit of a flavor to how that process went and whether or not it's smooth, and if there's how long it took to lease up the units, that would be of great interest. And that's the type of information I'm accustomed to seeing kind of in, I don't know if this will become a quarterly report out to this commission or what, but as I would request to see kind of for any active lease up that you have, just pick 5 simple ways of telling us how it's going. If there's anything open, we would definitely, for lease ups that lag in any way, you want to know about that so you can tweak your marketing. We want to make sure that we're being as supportive as possible to you so that you have, and so that the property manager has enough folks to be working with. Because I think that is kind of the worst, is when you have restrictions that somehow they don't line up with the pools of people that you're trying to match with. So if you could help us look into that as a follow-up, that would be great. And then this is just a question I have, and I'll just come out and say I probably diverge with my fellow commissioners and with respect to my own personal opinion on this, but in your experience, is it customary to see like these one-off agreements that are used for your restrictions and your units that are tied to these different developments, or is there some kind of overarching desire to kind of get these things to conform so that it's manageable for you, manageable for Mike, and that it's more or less folks are kind of doing the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a holy grail kind of pursuit of trying to come up with the magic template. I think that the challenge is always that when the city has a template, the builder challenges the template. And so it goes into legal review. Sometimes cities say no changes at all and the builder will take it, but sometimes they do modify. But I've seen everything from 500 units, 86 different flavors of agreement over 40 years to maybe 2 different based on the ordinance and then a package that came along with it. And it's just, that's the spectrum I've seen. But all of it is subject to sort of what happens in that back and forth when that developer turns into an inclusionary housing ordinance or inclusionary housing agreement or affordable housing agreement and how that gets finalized. On the rental side, it's a little bit more, actually, no, I don't want to misspeak. I haven't seen anything work as much.
Mike, how many do you think we have, Mike?
I think we have the full gambit of everything. And it really depends on the timing of when that agreement was signed. So you have a development like Springline, for example, that is coming online now. And we'll have other developments that'll be coming online within a year or two, basically finishing within the same maybe few year span that have completely different agreements depending on when they were signed and what the inclusionary, what the inclusionary housing requirements were of the city at that time, because they were different when Springline, which was Station 1300 at the time, back in 2017.
Yeah,
So
the
Yeah.
other thing,
say
the
we
other
have
thing,
quite an
sorry.
array. No, that was it.
I was just going to say that the financing layers also create the agreement. So in the case where the city might give $5 million to a developer, that's one kind of agreement. In a case where you've got non-referral and referral units from the county, that's another kind of agreement. And then when it's pure play inclusionary, you've got another kind of agreement. I think that's that flavoring. Now, what's getting a little bit more stable, and I will admit this, is that in doing this for almost 15 years, the last like 4 or 5 years where you have a lot of cities establishing, either updating their inclusionary housing ordinance or putting one in for the first time, that legal template that's being done in the last 2 or 3 years is a lot more standardized than what was done before, where there was a lot of flexibility around negotiating covenants and recitals and sections of the agreement on a project by project basis. And then honestly, the other part is how many projects are in your portfolio, right? I've got cities right now that have 300 units and it's only 12 projects. I've got another city that has 500 units and I said 86 projects. So
when you come back to us again, I'd like to hear kind of what your philosophy is. I mean, for the most part, this commission likes to see the units being built. And I think it's very inefficient to have 300 units and 150 different agreements that the city has to keep track of. So usually in the bigger cities that are more production oriented, you see some threshold where you've got to have 5 units before you actually build the units or something. So a balance between wanting to see the units and also wanting to make it so that it's manageable for our staff and for our city, and that we don't see defaults happening because of like really esoteric agreements. And I've seen a lot of those over the years, and I think I just think it's kind of inefficient. So okay, so maybe you could work with Mr. Noche and see if any of those things are either when you come back for your next report to us, things that you could opine on, or areas that you can look at to start to kind of increase our infrastructure so that it's just a better program for our city. Thanks very much for your presentation and your time.
Thank you.
All right, I have a few questions, but I want to wait and see if John or Heather or Chelsea have some questions first. You're good? No questions, John? Is that what that meant?
All good. Thank you very much, Karen.
Okay. Heather, how about you?
No, I'm it's a learning experience for me. So I've been really appreciating hearing all about the different ins and outs of it. So it's informative and no questions.
Chelsea? All right, good. Then I will go ahead with my questions, which I have to go back and this is just in passing while you're doing your presentation. First of all, thank you. It's great. I really appreciate you sharing with us the frustrating aspects of the convergence of different policies. Mm-hmm. Like the fact that the bank only counts your past 24 months of income, but the income threshold is determined by your future earnings kind of makes me want to pull my hair out. It's good to know about. Like, it gives us empathy for why people are really fed up with so-called affordable housing programs and things like that, and the difficulty of going through the process. And so I appreciate you lifting those things up, because it's really important for us, for everyone, to appreciate the frustration points and the potential for improvement. So thank you for that. It also makes it really clear that you know, you got this, you got all the details. And if people have questions, it's clear you're going to have the answers. And I kind of want you to like run for the state legislature so you can fix some of this, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah, that's a very different conversation.
Yeah. So one of the things I was wondering is and I also sat in on I had a conflict, but I sat in on part of your training last week.
Mhm.
And I saw that you said you can only enter one drawing at a time. So what if a family is a 3-person household? And I saw quickly on your chart, that means they could apply for a X bedroom or a X+1 bedroom. And let's say there are 2 drawings for those different configurations. Do you counsel them on how, then it's kind of like a strategic question, which one should I enter? Or can they enter one as a first choice and the other is, what do you do for the people?
Yeah, it's a tough one. We know we've had this rule, this business rule, if you will, in our software for a while, and it made sense. We've been administering a little. Sometimes being administrator for a really long time can be a negative, and we've kind of. I think one of the things we did, especially when we started doing inclusionary that were inside of tax credit units, we got challenged by one property manager that said that having somebody enter one drawing at a time was a fair housing issue. I explored it with attorneys and it wasn't necessarily completely true, but one of the things that we are trying to do is open up to allow for more flexibility there and make it a city-led decision as opposed to a house keys business rule, so that you as a city can determine if you want to allow people to enter more than one drawing at a time. The challenge is always going to be that if I'm in 2 drawings and I get selected in those lotteries, and if I'm in 2 drawings where there's a lottery process in the drawing, and I have 2 numbers that I receive, I got to figure out what decision to make and how do we then unwind having that person choose maybe after the fact, right? So they enter the drawing, they get the results, but then they have to lock in and choose before we start the underwriting process. We just have to figure out operationally and logistically how we make that work. Because if you have like 50 drawings going on and everybody's doing this kind of drawing hopping type of thing, how does that commitment process work for those folks to take the next steps? But it is a challenge, like you said. We try to tell people, you want to make sure you choose the drawing that you really want or opt out, right? So if you look at one that you're in and you opt out, you may opt into the next one, but now you've affected yourself as a backup tenant or buyer as opposed to somebody that's in the ranking. So technically speaking, you can be in all the drawings essentially if you enter a drawing, get ranked, don't like your ranking, opt out and opt into the next drawing. But when you opt into that next drawing, you would be at best a backup. Because those folks that have been ranked, you'd be an unranked person in that drawing. So we have to burn through the unranked people. Now, I can't stress enough though, the equalizer are those that are willing to package a file. There are just very few people that are willing to package a file relative to the number of people that want to enter the drawing. So sometimes if you enter the file, that's really an X factor for that applicant. But to your point, that operational, having that flexibility to allow people to enter multiple drawings is something that we are trying to figure out operationally, software wise and logistically how to make that work. But it definitely is a labor and software based challenge to make sure you're following that so that people get a chance to take advantage of the drawings.
Okay. So I guess I'm not the only person to ask that. And there's some cities who would want people to be able to enter more than one lottery.
Well, yeah, the property manager broached this. The city no city has actually asked us for it. It was more the property management companies. And sometimes you got to take your property manager input with a grain of salt because they don't like the fact that there's a BMR administrator at all because they feel like they've done this before. And whether we've been hired by a city or hired by the builder, the reason why is because they know there are requirements that sometimes every property manager can't follow through on. So it was literally one of those tax credit projects. So it's a unique situation where that came up, but it did get us to think about maybe we need to have more flexibility, and at least put it in the hands of the city to allow for that configuration. But there is overhead tied to that decision.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we don't have a degradation of service in some other area because we're trying to manage the multi the folks that want to hop, what we call lottery hoppers, right? They want to be able to play the chance card.
Right. Okay. Other question I had, because people have expressed concern about having to provide a whole lot of personal information to get it to position 100 on a list that, could be your, so, but it seems like to get onto the system and receive an application ID, is that well, how much information has to be?
It's a relatively low lift. So we're asking you to provide basic member of household information and basic income information. And then you can get an application ID and you can enter a drawing. You don't really go through and upload or package a file or do any of that stuff until you see, I mean, you're hedging, obviously as a person, you're hedging your bets and saying, do I want to really package all this file stuff if I don't know where I'm at? Now,
Right.
My argument, and you may not agree with this, but my argument to every applicant is what we're asking you to do is going to be relevant at some point in your life. You're
Right.
going to apply for something where this documentation is required. So if you learn it from us, it's probably going to help you apply for scholarship funding, some other community benefit. And so it's not like it's lost on just packaging it once, but to answer your question directly, they don't have to answer much just to get an application ID and to get in the drawing.
Right. I think for some people, it feels like an intrusive.
Yeah.
And it's also a pain in the, but so to your point is more to the hassle factor.
Yeah.
For some people, it's a privacy thing. But thank you. So they really don't have to enter all their information until they decide it's worth it to them. And you give them information to assess whether it's worth it to them.
Exactly. So they get their rank, to get your ranking in a lottery, we need to know the names of the people that are in your household and your income sources and your income amounts.
Okay.
So you've got to say that I make 100,000 working at these two companies, and here are the names of the people in my household. But beyond that, the asset documentation and providing any of that stuff, you don't have to do that to enter a drawing. Just that basic, kind of the legal minimum standard, household size, total income.
And do you have the flexibility to accept income verification for informal work? Like, housekeepers who work for multiple households, not through an agency. They don't quite have their own business, but they get paid on a regular basis by these households, or people who maybe are day workers and they don't have, like, how do you help people who are in the sort of informal workforce?
So it's tough, depending on the situation, but there are verification of employment by the person that's employing them, or they have some kind of bank statement that they're providing, or some kind of business license. I mean, those standards are all driven by federal law and state law and how you certify income. Most of us are using the Section 8 sort of determination of income standards that HUD uses as kind of like the baseline, and the state of California kind of borrows from HUD to come up with their numbers. So this is really driven by those kind of federal and state guidelines. But to that point, it's all about income inclusion. And then we're actually giving them more credit. We're trying to find that income. So unlike a lender that's trying to disqualify that income, we're actually trying to find and include that income.
Right. Okay. The other thing you mentioned that I really appreciated is that you explain to people like area median income, what that means. And what isn't quite like, there's area median income, which is half the people make less and half the people make more, but then totally confusing, it's a percentage of that number, which kind of implies that 50% of AMI, it's a reasonable thing to misunderstand that then a quarter of the people make less than that amount of dollars per year. But actually, that's not true. Actually, I think way more than a quarter people, like it's a percent of the number at which 50% of the people make less than that. But that doesn't mean that that percent of people are below that level of income. So it is a very confusing system. And I guess I'm just saying, I love that you explained that percent AMI. It might be helpful to also explain like the polarization of income and the fact that those bands kind of don't make sense. And you're not crazy. It's just that they don't make sense, like to the people who are playing.
Yeah, we try not to take it for granted. So we try to start out with what's average versus median,
Yeah.
and try to break that down. And then quartile income is, kind of how this works. So you got 25%, 25th percentile income, 50th percentile income. So that how that climb sort of works with the quartiles versus median versus average, we do try to break that down. And then obviously the reality is these income limits that are published by HCD every year are not on the nose in terms of math. So you could have a moderate income person and you calculate it out and it's 121% or 120.5%. And how do they come up with that number? And it's because HUD has inflation adjusters and weird voodoo economics kind of that goes inside of those numbers. And so we try to explain that don't try to calculate your own income. The state publishes the limits. They tell you in the band where you fall, and you may not agree with it mathematically, but that's the law.
Right.
So we try to separate the math from the income limit. The other part that's challenging is the way that you calculate the sales price or the rents are not the way you determine maximum income. So we don't get into that at a applicant level, but at a city and practitioner level, we internally as a team really try to make sure we understand that when we tell a builder that state law says you take the median income times 110 times 35%, and then you get the payment and back into it from there, that's different from telling somebody that, your purchase price for a moderate might be worth based on 110% of median, but your income limit for the buyer is based on 120%.
Right.
So you've got that. So at a practitioner level, it's even more complicated, but at a consumer level, we try to just tell them, look, just look at the published number, see what your household size is and keep it very simple.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that too. I still don't completely understand it, but but I'm glad that you do, and you have a way of explaining it to people that meets their needs. Whether it's city people or people making policy like us, or recommending policy like us, or the applicants. Let's see. Oh, and then I think this gets to marketing, but also to filling out the application, because I know a lot of people will have trouble, especially people in our extremely low income target population will have trouble filling out the online application. They may not have a very good connection, or they might only have their phone or whatever. So I know a way around that is for their trusted go-to organization in the community to help them. And that could be legal aid. It could be Nuestra Casa as a community organizing kind of shop in Menlo Park and East Pelham, North Fair Oaks. And so do you have relationships with them, not just for marketing, but for like helping with the boots on the ground, kind of getting into the online system?
Yeah, it's one of the areas we struggle in. To be honest with you, we're really trying to network these organizations, compensate them. I mean, I've run a HUD-approved counseling agency before. I know one of the biggest problems that we had was just funding, being able to maintain that. So some of what we do with our income that we earn from, so just so you know where our approach is from our cost structure, we can only charge cities so much, right? General funds or housing funds, we typically charge a city $75,000 up to 150 units. And then there's a calculus that determines what the ultimate price is. But that doesn't cover, we have a $3 million budget that does not cover, the cost of administration. But when we do ownership housing and ownership transactions, the income that we earn from the ownership transactions heavily subsidizes the rest of our work. And one of the things we're trying to do are literally sponsor and pay. We sponsor these nonprofits that do the HUD-approved counseling with the hope that we can bring them into the network to help our applicants get access to that service. So we are working, we piloted that in Hayward with A1 and some other organizations, and we're trying to do a better job of that in a lot of our other jurisdictions to build that pool of folks to be a part of our team. As we get more ownership housing, that's really where that subsidy comes from. That allows us, because honestly, if you're not paying the counseling agencies, they don't want you to just dump more people on them. But if you are having a monetary, relationship with them, then it does allow them to provide that support.
Do you ever work? Yeah, okay. What about cities compensating these organizations to provide that support? And other supports, maybe. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
like
the
Menlo
hou-
Park, we do not do good outreach to our marginalized communities. And so I have an opinion as a resident, not necessarily as a housing commissioner, that we need to improve that. And you can't just ask people to do work. You have to pay them. So like, have you seen that work in other cities?
Well, and so I'm at this early stage with a few cities that we have contracts with, where as part of our scope of work, they have said House Keys will suggest how to use housing funds. So they might mention the amount that they have in housing funds and come up with strategic ways to use those funds. In the case of Menlo Park, that would be one of those areas that we would promote. Two areas that we try to talk about housing funds with is, one, formalizing how to acquire your properties, so that if an owner is trying to sell, that process is very formalized as opposed to going to council each time on a transaction by transaction basis. And then the other piece is being able to create this ecosystem of organizations that can receive compensation for being a support system for your applicant pool, be it rent or sale. I think that kind of feeds into the question earlier about marketing as well.
Right.
Is that as those agencies become part of that ecosystem, they tend to refer families to the program as well.
Great. Thank you. And are there lenders who are able to adapt to that future earning potential criteria?
No,
Like,
not that I know of.
not even like, there's this whole new finance for social good kind of world. Is that, you don't hear any, I mean,
Not on a first mortgage lending basis, maybe
Yeah.
on some CDFIs that are out there, community development financial institutions that are out
Yeah.
there, they could have that, but first mortgage lenders are still having a bit to come around. Now, your federal home loan bank like Boston Private, but they were just acquired by Silicon Valley Bank. Some of those banks that have like a federal home loan bank type of connection, they may be more flexible than others because they can portfolio those loans, as opposed to most loans are being sold in the secondary market. But these lenders that have that mandate and portfolio their loans, then they tend to have a little bit more flexibility when underwriting. But honestly, that kind of lending kind of went away with that last wave of foreclosures. Hopefully it comes back.
right. Okay. Yeah, in a nice way.
Yeah, exactly. In a supportive way, not a predatory way. Sorry.
Exactly. I think that covers my questions. Just in case my questions spurred questions from anyone else, I'll do one more call for questions and then we'll go to public comment, and the public might have some questions.
And I just have not a question, but a comment. Julius, what you guys are doing is outstanding. The level of organization and sophistication and professionalism is really to be commended. And it gives me great confidence that we're handling this in an organized fashion. So thanks for all your work. To you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, John. Okay, Mike, do you want to see if there's any public comment?
Absolutely. All right, for members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, please engage the raised hand feature. I will then have the ability to open your microphone and you can provide your public comment to the Housing Commission. And I don't see any hands raised, so I will return the meeting to the chair. And I will let you know if anything does come through, but I don't see any hand raised.
All right. I have one more question. I'm sorry, I didn't get to my top of my mental list, but it was on there. Is there a former commissioner, Michelle Tate, was very concerned that and brought it up many times, so I'm going to bring it up in her honor. There are a lot of programs to prepare people to be home buyers, but there aren't very many programs that prepare people to be home renters. And, they need first and last month's rent and certain things like that. So is that a service, or is there any component of your education, your applicant education that covers that, refers people to any sort of services to prepare them, or what can you tell us about that?
So we do have our we do cover rental orientation class, but I would say rental preparation is something that we don't have right now. And this is an unfortunate part about a lot of the Silicon Valley and the Peninsula organizations that went under in 2015 that were able to do a lot of this stuff. We were one of them. NHS Silicon Valley went under in 2015. We provided a pretty broad group of services at that time, including different kinds of counseling. Unfortunately, that hasn't been a part of what is available now. But again, I think I just want to point back to that, dovetail into that the ecosystem aspect of those organizations. Again, those housing funds, if the city of Menlo Park has housing funds and wants to be creative with those housing funds, one of the ways that you can bring those things into the fold, I just emailed Hira today. She does, Maeve Ellis Brown does great presentations about rental and supportive. And so a lot of the attorneys out there that do a lot of the fair housing stuff, Project Sentinel does a lot of great stuff in Redwood City and in the Peninsula area. It just takes funding. If I could show up to them and say, hey, let's put something together with our applicant pool, they would say, how much, how much can you support to put it together? And they'd be happy to throw something together for the tenants. So there's, on the good side, there are organizations that we know of, provided we can provide the resources to partner with them, and we're happy to help them structure those presentations.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. I think I'm going to give a little pregnant pause because I think if there are no other questions, we're probably done with this agenda item, but it's a great opportunity to get our questions answered. So I'm going to be quiet for a minute. Looks good. Okay. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your presentation.
Thank you. I got a lot of notes from all of you, so I did not drop your questions. So we will be following up with the items you asked me about.
All right. Thanks so much.
Take care. See you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. We will move to our next item, which is item D4, selection of the vice chair, because sadly, Rachel moved to San Francisco. Yay for her, but sad for us. So the way I'd like to do this is, let's have some conversation. I want to make sure, so the vice chair helps the chair, meets with the chair and Mike, and helps to organize the agendas, plan the meetings, sometimes several months in advance as much as we can. And of course, fills in if the chair can't serve for whatever reason. And typically, let me just do the overview. We rotate in order of experience and seniority on the council. So following that, Lauren would be, I intend to make a motion if someone else doesn't, to nominate Lauren. But that doesn't mean that other people can't make or discuss and say that they would like to make an alternate motion. People can nominate themselves. And I guess the first motion to be made and seconded is the one we'll vote on, but it might help to know if somebody's planning on making an alternate motion before we do that voting. John, you had your hand up first. I'm going to call on you.
I'd like to nominate Chelsea Nguyen if she's willing to serve in the capacity.
Okay, so you are not making a motion, but you're letting us know you would make that motion at this point, because I'm not calling for motions yet. Chelsea?
Oh, I was going to nominate Nevada.
Okay.
I'm not interested at this time. Thank you very much.
And again, you guys can use the word nominate and all that, but I'm not yet asking for a motion. This is, I really want to surface all of the proposals before we go to making motions. Okay, so thank you, Chelsea. I've already stated my intention. Anyone else? Heather, can I ask you specifically? And I'm just going to go through and ask everybody.
Well, I'm certainly not nominating myself, so I'm just on a steep learning curve still. So,
Okay.
And I think probably any number of people would be very good at this. I think there's probably a bandwidth issue for a lot of people. So in terms of their time, how much time they have to put into it. So that's all.
Okay. Chelsea, since you nominated Nevada, would you rather not, like, do you have an opinion? Since there's been a proposal with Lauren and you.
Yeah, so before John make that nomination, I just thought that Nevada, I believe she's been with the Housing Commission for a long time. And I think she deserves a spot. That's how I feel about that. But anyway,
Oh, absolutely. Nevada has served as vice chair and chair. So that's otherwise she would absolutely be the person that I would be proposing because of her tenure and experience.
As a point of clarification, is this position is vice chair for the rest? Is it for 2022 or until December
I
or?
think it's until April, Mike, right? That's, or May, after any people roll off and we have a new configuration, right?
Yeah, that's a great question.
A really good
Thank
question,
you.
'cause COVID messed everything up.
Yeah, and it would be at the regularly scheduled time that we would choose chair and vice chair, which, yeah, I'm totally blanking on when we just did that. Sorry,
That's
everything's
typically
blending into
April,
one right now,
yeah.
but it would be on the regular interval. So the next scheduled time that we would pick the vice chair and chair, that the nomination would then be up again.
Yeah,
So
and I
it's
think
a
that
partial year, essentially.
the city council tends to consider applications to commissions sometime in April. So if they complete that process in April, then at our May meeting, we have new commissioners. And that's at the end of that meeting usually is when we vote on the new chair and vice chair, if I remember right.
There was also some conversation last time about whether or not we wanted to push that to January of the next year so that folks would feel more comfortable voting for chair and vice chair if they were new to the crew. So I don't know if that is something folks want to discuss tonight or if they're comfortable with just tabling it and moving forward with April.
Yep.
So I think if I remember right, we discussed that, but realized that it's in the commission's manual as is, and that would be a city council policy matter to change it. Mike, am I right about that?
Yes, so I believe that's correct. So I think I did a little background with the city clerk's office, and that was the response I gathered, that we did have to move forward with the chair and vice chair, because I think we did push the original one vice chair and chair selection back a month, I believe, and I don't think we were allowed to push it any further.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. So let's see, who have I not called on? Just wondering, yeah, okay. Can I go, John, it's between you and me. What I really don't like about this process is there's like this race to be the first to make a motion because nobody wants to vote no on somebody.
Make a motion.
Okay, you're racing, go ahead.
I'd like to nominate Chelsea Nguyen if she's willing to serve.
And Chelsea, how do you feel about that?
I accept.
Okay. And all right, so then we vote on that. And if that doesn't pass, I will nominate Lauren. And it's just very hard to do this, but here we go. So is there any discussion on the motion and the second?
I'd like to speak on the motion, please.
Okay. And actually, I guess we need a second.
Oh.
Do we have a second for the motion?
If I may, through the chair.
Chelsea can second herself, right?
If you could, but yes,
Okay.
Mike?
I just wanted to mention, I believe we should just ask for public comment before
Yes,
taking a
you.
vote. Just as a point of order.
Absolutely, but should we get a second first?
I second.
Okay. right.
Okay, I will call for public comment now, Madam Chair. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, please engage the raised hand feature. I will then have the ability to open your microphone and you can provide public comment to the Housing Commission. And I do not see any hands raised, so I will return the meeting to the chair.
Okay. Do we have any discussion? John?
I'd like to make a point. First of all, I would be delighted to serve under Vice Chair Bigelow or Vice Chair Nguyen. I think they both bring the right intentions to our group and useful skills and experiences. So I'd be delighted with either. That said, Chelsea expressed interest in serving in this role earlier this year, or I should say serving as chairman. And I thought that, or I should say, what is it, president, chairman? Karen, what is your position?
Chairperson.
Chairperson,
Chair.
sorry, excuse me, chairperson. And so I thought that enthusiasm was something that was laudable. And I think she'd bring a different perspective to the commission. And so that's why I've nominated her. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion, comment?
I would just like to know from Mr. Noche what it takes to win 3 or 4.
So my understanding on normal motions is that, or excuse me, on any other item, it would be 4. So I think, but if we can't get to that, then I don't know if it would then become the majority, or if it's split, then someone would have, you'd have to make another motion and basically hold another vote to see if there's a change. And then if there isn't, we would have to bring it back again at another meeting. So I believe it is still 4, regardless of
That's what I think.
past vice
Okay.
chair. So
Yeah.
I believe that's correct.
I think
Unless
it's-
somebody abstains, in which case then we have an odd number and then it would be 3.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
well, I'll add to the discussion. Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
I just wanted to say that I really appreciated John's thoughts and consideration, and I very much appreciate what Chelsea brings to our group. The reason I didn't push for chair earlier in the year is because traditionally we've all rotated around so that everybody got turns in terms of how long that they've been with the Housing Commission and whether or not they have served as chair or vice chair. So I'm very interested in the position and was trying to be respectful of the process that had been laid out before us, but also very much appreciate Chelsea's perspective.
And I will add that I nominated Lauren because, she has the benefit of more time on the commission to see how we work and what is challenging about our job and how we can stick with things and progress and et cetera, et cetera. There's a benefit in figuring out how these levers of public service turn and don't turn and how they get jammed, right? So that is very valuable. I will point out that Lauren's term ends in April of 2023. So her being vice chair starting in April of, oh wait, that doesn't work, but you have the possibility of another term. Yeah, okay. All right, so I was thinking that if it needed to be, would be an argument for you to have been vice chair right now so that you could be chair before your term ends, which I didn't think about back then. So anyway, but basically for the value of experience, I still will vote for Lauren, which means not because I don't appreciate Chelsea's contributions, which I really, really do. I will be voting no on John's motion, but it's not no on Chelsea. It's not yet on Chelsea. And it is a strong yes to Chelsea's voice and contribution on this commission, and a lot of gratitude for you being here. You know, just all of that. And I just want to be straightforward that, you know, the reason I wanted to have the discussion is to say, this is who I would like to see as vice chair. And so that's how I'm going to be voting. And I really appreciate you, Chelsea. I think I love all of your contributions, your comments, and your perspective. So any other points of discussion? Okay. Then I guess we're ready to take a vote. So the motion is Chelsea to be nominated for, I'm taking notes. Okay. Motion by John and second by Chelsea. Okay, Lauren.
Respectfully, nay.
Okay. Heather.
Also nay.
Nevada.
I'm going to abstain.
Chelsea.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
And I say nay. So where does that leave us, Mike? That's 3 yes, 1 abstention, and 2 no's. Oh, sorry, 3 no's, 1 abstention, and yeah.
2 yeses.
And 2 yeses. Yeah.
Yeah, so the motion does fail.
Okay. Okay. So I will make a motion to nominate Lauren to serve as vice chair. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay. Okay. And another vote. Lauren
Aye.
and Heather
Aye.
and Nevada.
I'll abstain, thanks.
And Chelsea
Nay.
and John,
Aye.
and I vote yes. So now we have 4 yeses. So the motion passes. Okay, thank you. This is always super awkward. Chelsea, again, thank you. And thank you for being willing to serve as vice chair. And I look forward to when that happens. Okay, with that, we can move on to reports and announcements. The first one would be the ad hoc subcommittee on the Bmr Guidelines, which is now just Lauren and me. Lauren, I did check in with Mike about the upcoming timeline. So if it's okay with you, I'll just give that brief update.
Well, before we move on to an update, I was going to ask if it would be responsible for us to open up a position on the Bmr subcommittee since we had a person leave.
I'm going to ask Mike about that because we didn't put it on the agenda.
It was something I just thought of right now. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. Mike, does that have to be agendized?
You know, I'm not quite sure. It's a great question. I don't think this necessarily needs to be agendized. So if it is of interest, I would say just in the interest of time, I would say if that is of interest, I would say let's make the motion, and I can confirm if that is something that we can uphold. And if not, we can bring it back again, but I can definitely inquire to make sure that that's okay to move forward on.
I think in
Okay.
the past, we've just indicated interest in being and participating on subcommittees. It wasn't something that necessarily needed a motion.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, I believe that is correct, Commissioner Bigelow. So that's why I think we can move forward.
yeah.
And I think we should to that point. So I think
So Chelsea, would you be interested in serving on the BMR ad hoc committee?
I'm afraid I
Or-
can't because I'd be traveling for work shortly overseas and I'm not sure how that will all work out. I would love to, but I mean, are we going to be doing it via Zoom?
We've been meeting weekly via Zoom for
Okay.
the past few months on Tuesday during lunch
Mhm.
about.
Okay, okay, is that's a possibility. I'll consider it. It's just that I'll be in the next 3 weeks, I'll be traveling all over Eastern Europe and Africa. And I'm just concerned that, that in case you guys like to meet up in person and such, and I wouldn't be able to make it. But if it's via Zoom, then that's a possibility. I can block it off from my work schedule because there's no such thing as lunchtime when you work.
Okay. Then should we just say, let's give that a try?
Sure. Is it once a month or once a week, or how does it work?
Right now we're meeting once a week because we're really trying to get something done by the end of the year.
Okay,
There's a lot more to be done. So this committee could live for a while and people can rotate on and off as we take on different chunks. So I think, yeah, my only question is, since you actually live in a BMR ownership unit, would you be recused from things that have to do with BMR ownership policies? Or would we grandfather things in?
I think, yes, I can, but I think that I can offer a lot more in more of an intimate,
Yeah,
like insider information than you guys would normally sitting there guessing and
Mhm.
wondering. You're actually hearing from the horse's mouth, somebody had actually lived it. I
Yeah.
think that I don't have to make a decision, but or a vote. But I think that I mean, and you have to understand, I no longer have an interest, right? I'm already in a BMR. It's not like I'm trying to get a BMR. So
Yeah.
it's not like any decision policy that I would make would technically affect me. It would
Mhm.
normally affect the future BMR families. So I'm not sure if that's even necessary, but
Mhm.
I think having my point of view
Mhm.
would benefit a great deal because, I know what it's like. I understand what it's like. So I don't think in that sense I should recuse myself in terms of policy because it wouldn't affect me anyway. I already in it. I'm
And
not
if something
fighting.
were to affect you, maybe it has to do with the selling of a BMR unit, then you could provide input, but
Right,
recuse
but
yourself from the vote.
right,
think-
but I wouldn't be selling. I mean, who would be crazy enough to sell? But
Yeah.
anyway, it's up
Mhm.
to, that's, up for discussion.
It's a noble answer by our city
Fun?
attorney and Mike.
Does this require a motion and a vote, or is it
I
just?
don't think so. No,
Great,
so
thank you.
I think we should,
I'm in agreement. Chelsea should be on the subcommittee if she's
Yeah.
willing and able to serve. That'd be
Yep.
great.
I agree. Okay, so I think that's done. Seeing no further discussion. So the update is, let's see, that and it's also an update about our next meeting, which is the special meeting on 11/17 for housing element policy discussions. We hope, fingers crossed, to have a preview of the BMR proposal, which will be a pared down proposal from what you saw last time, because we want to prioritize, we want to complete some high priority, low controversy updates. And so we've taken out things that, you know, with your input, we recognize were complicated and could be controversial, and really trying to focus on what's the highest priority. So hopefully we'll have a preview of that. And then on our December 1st meeting, we hope to be able to have something to vote on so that it's teed up for city council if they get to it in December, or if not in January. Right, Mike?
Yeah,
And none of that is a guarantee, because Mike is everything.
If I may, Madam Chair, I just wanted a point of clarification. So my understanding on the 17th is that we'd actually be using the full entirety of that meeting for interaction presentation from the M group and staff. And that is primarily related to the housing element.
Right.
Our goal is potentially what comes out of that conversation. We want to make sure we're aligning with the work that the BMR subcommittee is doing. So I don't know that we're going to have a staff report on the Bmr guidelines, so to speak, on the 17th. I think at the earliest we would try to have something potentially ready to go on that first meeting in December. However, I will also just give the disclaimer, as I've shared with the subcommittee, that there are a lot of items in motion, and I'm one person in the position of keeping initiatives in the housing division moving forward, whereas we used to have two. So that's not to say we won't get things accomplished, but things do take a little longer, unfortunately.
Right.
So we are definitely doing our utmost to keep our initiatives that we're working with the Bmr guidelines ad hoc moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So that's the update from the BMR ad hoc committee, unless Lauren wants to add something. Okay. Any commissioner updates from anyone? Okay, well, I'll just sort of, it's in a way a repeat of what I said last time, which is Housing Leadership Day has now passed. But the workshops, at least some of them, are posted, the videos, and I attended a couple of them. One of them in particular was really relevant to the work we're doing. It was called Leveraging Development for Good. And it was a lot of case studies from cities in the county of how commercial developments were linked to land dedications for deeply affordable housing and special needs housing. And I highly recommend it. I think it's only an hour, or maybe an hour and 15, maybe an hour and a half. A lot, you can find a lot of inspiration in that. So any other commissioner updates? No. All right, any recommendations for future agenda items? How about Mike? Do you have any staff updates or announcements?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pretty much we already touched on the 11/17 special meeting, but we are moving forward with that. So I know we have one commissioner who probably won't be able to make it. And as Chelsea mentioned, she'll be traveling and she's going to do her best to make it. So that'll leave us at 4 commissioners. So if anyone's schedule changes where you won't be able to make it to that meeting, we won't have a quorum on that evening otherwise. And I'd like to make sure we are able to have a quorum. So if anyone's schedules change, please let me know. And then the other item on that note would be, we typically post the agenda on Thursdays. However, that Thursday will be the 11th is Veterans Day. So staff is planning to have the report out on Wednesday, which will be the 10th. So I wanted to mention that as well, so you can keep a lookout for it.
Great.
And I have shared we'd like to have reports out as early as possible, and staff will do their best to do so there's any items we can release early, we will try our utmost to make that happen, but I can't make a guarantee on that front.
Okay. John?
Mike, I'm sorry. I apologize if I missed something regarding a notice on the 17th. I'm actually traveling on the 17th, so I can't make that meeting either.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Pimentel.
November 7th.
Yeah, November 17th. I have you down as not being able to attend.
Thank you.
To confirm.
So you were already counted as not being able to attend. Yay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
And I don't have any additional reports.
Okay. Thanks. With that, I think we can adjourn at 8:42. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, good evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Have a good
Fran.
evening.
You too. Bye.